Hello, 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 and welcome to Reality NSFW Rewind, Professor Tim Watches Survivor Africa. I am, as always, your host, Karen Eisenberg, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Professor Tim Wilson. Tim, how are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing very well, but I realized that out of the three of us, I'm the one who looks scruffy. I have to do something with my hair. It's had no effect, you see.
That's fine. It's lockdown. Everything is forgiven. And we're also joined today. We have a pinch hit guest today because I have to tell you, I'm sure many people came hoping that we were going to have Dr. Mike Zahalski of Survivor 35, Heroes, Healers, Hustlers. Unfortunately, Dr. Mike's mother is very, very ill. It doesn't look good. So he actually had to bounce out just last night at the last minute. And so we are joined by a man who I know could jump on without doing a lot of research because he knows this stuff so incredibly well. He is the host of Twish on RHAP, and he was also one of the hosts of a Survivor game, a circle game that I played months about the results of which we're not going to talk about, but I had a great time. The point is, Jordan is one of the people I would like to be who actually knows this game backwards and forwards, and not only Survivor but other shows as well. So thank you so much for stepping in, Jordan. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for having me, Karen and Tim. And also, I didn't know that I was stepping in for Dr. Mike, and I hope everything. Based on what you were saying, it sounds like a bad situation, but I hope everything turns out well with his family. I'm a big Dr. Mike fan. He's been on my podcast before. Love him on Survivor, and hope he's doing all right.
Yeah, me too. And he's said, make it very clear, he wants me to contact him again when we start booking for the next season. So we will be seeing Dr. Mike, but not until we get to Marquesas. So let's jump into this episode. So we always start with, the fallout from last night's vote. And we get the two vote, they just voted out Brendan. And we got, two reactions. We got Kim Powers is saying, I had to vote Brandon out, right? Because I don't trust him anymore, but it tugs at her heart, right? And then Lex, on the other hand, says, we have good shape. We have a numerical advantage. And he said Brandon was a friend and he would have had a hard time for voting for him. So he didn't. Right. And so I think this is a good time to talk about the whole idea about friendship versus alliance. And even we talked about this obviously a lot last week, but the idea, did Lex play this correctly? Should he have brought Brandon in? And if so, should he have spoken to his alliance about it before? What do you think, Jordan? Because for me, the answer is obvious, but I don't think it's obvious for everybody.
So I think that Lex had the right idea in terms of trying to bring Brandon in, because Brandon in the previous episode, when he voted out Kelly, completely tanked his own game and his whole alliance's game by voting out Kelly instead of Lex, which is honestly, in my opinion, one of the worst moves in Survivor history in terms of like the shift of the power dynamics, because he could have been in power. Instead, he gave power to Lex and the rest of his former Boran alliance. And so I think that Lex had the right idea to bring Brandon in because they were close. Brandon clearly trusted him. But once Lex saw that he didn't have the numbers to save Brandon, he should have just jumped on, because when you vote against your alliance and you don't tell them what you're doing, not that he voted against his own alliance, but he voted for a different person than he said he was going to vote for and that they were voting for, I think you lose trust. And we saw that in this episode where you have Big Tom and Ethan, who are his two biggest allies, saying that they don't trust him as much anymore. So I think it was a big mistake for Lex to do that. It was the right idea to try to bring Brendan in, but once it doesn't work, I think you have to sort of pivot. You have to be flexible, and maybe just vote in a way that you don't necessarily want to.
Right. And I'm not even so sure that he, based on these reactions, that they even knew that that knew that he was going to do it. Right. I mean, there were some rumblings, but I wonder what would have happened if he had sat down with Ethan and Tom and Big Kim, Kim J, and said, look, and laid out the case that you're making, Jordan. And then at least they would have been on notice. And perhaps, I think, they should have agreed with it, I think, because it really did improve their games. But this idea to kind of do it in what they think is an underhanded way, and it might have been an underhanded way, I feel like is just like always a mistake.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you have an alliance that you trust, you're only going to erode that trust if you don't do what you tell them that you're going to do. So I do think it was, again, right idea to keep Brandon, because I think that for Lex personally, having Brandon in the game would have helped him. For the rest of it, his alliance, he didn't have that same relationship with Kim Johnson and with Tom and with Ethan. So for them, I think that who when it was in the previous episode, it was Brandon going, I think, helps them, but it hurts Lex.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
Could I interject here?
Please.
Because I think there's something you're not taking into. I hate to come back to production, but what we don't actually know at what time of day the Brandon Lex conversation took place.
No, that's true, and they have thrown things out of order before.
And we also don't know whether there was actually time, because it would be very complicated to arrange that conversation between the members of the alliance before going to tribal council, if that conversation with Brandon took place late. My reading of the scenario is that it was a late conversation, and there simply wasn't time for Lex to make that arrangement, because Lex doesn't strike me, and this is the key, Lex doesn't strike me as somebody who keeps ideas to himself. He is the most garrulous person actually on the campsite. Arm around the shoulder. Gotta tell you, mate, I'm voting you out. He cannot keep a secret. So just think about it in practical terms, and looking at the personality. I think we have the debate you're having. Is a debate about something which has been constructed, not about a reality. The reality is that conversation with Brandon took place so late there was no time to arrange a little snuggle in the corner of the acacia bush.
I would argue if that's the case, I would say that you really should then rethink doing the whole thing. Like, you don't do it unless you run it by your alliance. I mean, but Jordan, I could be wrong. What do you think?
I agree. I think that would be the right thing to do. But again, do you think Lex is somebody who follows what the right thing to do is? Lex is somebody who is led by the last person he speaks to.
I mean, I think that Lex is a very old school Survivor player, where you're right. He plays Survivor again, and you'll see he has conversations. I'm going to vote you out, and this is why I'm going to vote you out, which is not something you could ever do in the modern game because of something called the hidden immunity idol, which I don't know if you know about yet.
Oh, I have heard about that. Yes.
Okay, so there's a hidden immunity idol where if you tell the person who's going home that they're going home, it could have disastrous consequences. And even without a hidden immunity idol, in many cases, it does not help you to tell the person who's going home that they're going home, because it allows them to scramble. Lex felt safe enough within his alliance to do it in the previous episode. But I think regardless of whether he had that conversation with Brandon right before tribal council or if it was earlier in the day, he knew the way that the rest of his alliance was going, and he may have had to screw Brandon by voting for him. And maybe that's something that he has to answer for if he gets to the final two. But I think that potentially alienating a juror, while it's not a great move, alienating your alliance that's still in the game, who might vote you out at the next tribal council, is a worse move.
Yeah, that's what I think. And also, it is one quick thing before we move on to the next thing. Kim Johnson says something here, which I think is clear to us, but it's interesting to know that she at least was also aware of it. She says that, she's looking at Lex and Tim and Ethan and says, these guys might say that they want to go to final three together, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't really trust each other.
Yeah. And also, in the early seasons, there's no such thing as a final. I mean, there is a final three. There's a point in the game where there's 3 people left, but only 2 people get to the end. So,
no, but that's what I meant when I said final 3. I think that was their agreement, and we didn't see exactly what the terms were, but it seems to be that we are going to stick together until the end, meaning for them final 3. And Tim is saying, Kim says, we might not get that far because these guys the trust is starting to break down, especially with respect to Lex.
Yes, we definitely saw the blowback from the Brandon vote at the beginning of this episode, and it really, it could have come back to bite Lex in this episode. He ends up winning immunity, and I wonder, we see T-Bird later in the episode that she's targeting Ethan. She doesn't know Ethan doesn't end up getting any votes. The only vote that doesn't go for Frank is Frank's vote, which ends up going for Kim, because I think they realized that their plan wasn't going to work. But I wonder if they would have had more traction if Lex didn't win immunity. Maybe they would have been able to get the move on Lex, because Ethan was a more popular social player around camp.
That's absolutely
willing to vote him out.
Yeah, we'll get there when we get there.
Can I ask, Karen?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
What is the difference in your mind between friendship and alliance?
Well, so for me, I don't think there's really such a thing as true, friendship in a game. If somebody is your friend, I mean, I shouldn't say that, right? There have been people, let me take that back. There are people in, various games over the years, Survivor, Big Brother, even in the Circle, where people are not working together, but they like each other personally. So it certainly exists. Right. But in general, in a case like this, where you are, in fact, voting with people, then what you have is not just a friendship. It is an alliance. And alliances often can even continue, even if the friendship breaks down. I mean, this is the whole question between, what happened with, Kim P, voting for Brendan. I think she absolutely did the right thing. But you can look at somebody and say, okay, this guy maybe is not my friend. I don't really trust him, but I need to keep him because he's the only person who was going to vote with me. So in a game, again, can friendship exist? Sure. I mean, I'm thinking about, BB6, and there were a lot of friendships that broke against the tribal lines that were in that house. But in a case like this, and certainly in this season of Survivor, friendship is friendship. We're talking about alliances here. And people, you can be friends after the game, Tim. But in the game, this is your ally. Or if it's your friend, then yes, this is somebody you like to play checkers with. But you don't think that they're going to vote for you. So that's my definition. That's how I split it. What do you think, Jordan?
I agree with that. I mean, there have been alliances of people that don't even like each other. And I mean, Tim, you watched Survivor Borneo. That 4-person alliance that got to the end. I mean, Rudy and Rich clearly liked each other, or at least respected each other. But like Sue and Rich didn't get along. Kelly and Sue towards the end didn't get along. Rudy was kind of grumpy the whole time, and I think that Sue and Kelly weren't the biggest fans of him throughout the game, even if they respected him. So I think that you could be in a working alliance with people if you aren't friends. And I think that someone like Kelly in Survivor Borneo clearly got along with like the Greg Buises and the Jervises and the Jenna Lewises of the world, even though she actively voted them out, as she wasn't in their alliance, but she was their friend. So I think there is a difference. I do think that in most cases, the strong alliances in Survivor have been people who also get along. And, it's sort of like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Do you get along with people and then make an alliance with them because you get along? Or do you make an alliance for strategic reasons and then you kind of learn to like them and be friends with them because they're on your side? So I do think that we see some really strong alliances where the people actually like each other and they are friends and they remain friends after the game. But then we also see some of these really, frenetic alliances where there's these crazy characters, they don't get along, yet they're able to work together. It's like a business relationship.
Right. So that's how we would break it down, I think, Tim.
Yes, I would probably go in the other direction, but you know that.
Right. No, and you can play a game using friendship. But again, for those of us, I think Jordan is much more like me in this regard. If you are a strategist, yes, you will work with people that you don't necessarily like.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the friendship is independent of the game, which I think is partly what you're saying. But if I were playing Survivor, I'd build up strong friendships, which would be completely irrelevant to any sort of alliances.
Oh, absolutely. And that's my point. That happens all the time, right? And you were friends after the show, but you did not work together in the game.
But I would also make it very clear, I think, that my friendships were independent of the alliance. I wouldn't be put in the position of Kim and Brandon, in other words. And I wouldn't I would make sure I was not in that position.
Yeah, and in terms of winning the game, I think, Tim, you just hit the nail on the head where it definitely benefits a player who makes friends with people that aren't in their alliance, because when they vote them out, these are the people on the jury. So if, let's say you've merged and there's your tribe and there's another tribe and you want to stick with your tribe, it will help you a lot if you do make it to the end of the game, if you are friends with the people that you're putting on the jury. And then if they're friends if they see you as a friend, they might be able to say, yes, he screwed me over in the game, but he was doing the logical thing to get further. And I kind of understand
absolutely. That. And I also think that Ethan gets this completely.
Absolutely.
He oozes friendship to
Mhm.
everybody,
Yeah.
and yet he's very clear about where his alliances are.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And Ethan uses the word alliance in that discussion where Lex is using the term friendship. But I think you're right. This is an alliance issue, not a friendship issue.
No, did I miss it? Because I had a certain amount on my mind while I was watching. And you flagged up something where you said Ethan says that he would like to play alone rather than in an alliance. And I didn't pick that up in today's episode.
Well, that comes a little later. We'll get to that.
It does come up. So I was just sort of having a mute moment.
No, but we will get to all
sorry.
of that. Yeah, then we get to this. No, it's fine, Tim. It's just I think we found that generally the best way to structure these episodes is to kind of go through it chronologically.
Yeah.
So we'll crack the whip and try to keep you on task, right? But we will get to it, and I certainly want to hear.
It will be a surprise for me. I should be delighted. Yep.
So then the next thing we see is, at night, and they are, on night watch, and we're hearing this heavy grunting, right? And we're hearing that this is a lion, I guess, who's stalking them, and these little grunts, they're concerned that maybe, it's calling its friends to feed, right? We don't really know. And they try to laugh it off, but obviously, this is concerning. And Tim, I know that you've been concerned about their physical safety out there. Jordan, I have heard that they actually had, Maasai people outside the boma with guns to use if necessary. So as much as this looks scary, I'm sure it was scary for them, we know, and I assume they also knew, that there are people outside who are going to prevent them from being eaten by a lion. What have you heard, Jordan? What do you think?
I've heard the same thing where, yes, in the boma at night, there are animals around. We saw the lion. That's not, a lot of times in Survivor, we get these nature shots that are sometimes, taken before the season even starts. But that's not the case here. You clearly see Ethan and Kim Powers like next to the wall, and you hear the lion. They are protected by production, like just for liability's sake. Like production couldn't let these people be in actual danger. But still, if you're next to like this wooden 6-foot wall and there's a lion outside, you're going to be scared, even if there's security around and production around that knows what to do if the lion were to somehow breach the encampment. But yeah, it's like that's part of the reason. Like Survivor Africa is such a unique season because we see that scene later in the episode where there's just like a horde of zebras running around, and it seems like any other nature scene that they've shot in Survivor where you see a lot of animals, but then you see that like these zebras are literally 50 feet away from the contestants, just running past. You see the contestants and the zebras in the same shot. I thought it was just B-roll, but it was really, they were just stampeding when the contestants were there.
Right. And I do think that when they left the boma, that again, off camera, there would be somebody armed right out of the shot.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
There was a I don't know whether I saw it or whether I was just putting it together because of the brilliance of the editing, but I'm sure there was a shot where we saw the line and then we pulled back to Ethan and Kim.
No, we didn't see it. We just saw.
We didn't see the two in the same shot.
Yeah, we only just saw their reaction.
Right.
Because the lion was outside the boma, right, and they were inside.
I thought I saw the lion through the branches of the acacia bush. It is rather romantic, isn't it, that they were protected by an acacia bush? I think it's a little bit like Dracula, isn't it? Really.
This is another one of Tim, we're going to put this is something we've discussed and we've never done it before, but we can put this, make a note about this, leave it to the end of the game, because I would love to know about acacia bushes and Dracula. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I think it's Hawthorne and Dracula, but anyway, let's go on.
All right. But what happened? I love to discuss these things with you at the end. Now, I know today you have things to do. Jordan has things to do. I kind of even have things to do. But really, I'm not putting you off. Let's just leave it, because otherwise, Tim and I, what happens is we get soundtracked. Tim and I go off on a merry jaunt together for half an hour discussing whatever this was, and then we lose all our viewers who actually want to listen to Survivor. But let's put a pin in that. I'm going to make a note. We can always come back at the end. Now, in terms of real dangers to the contestants, the next thing we see, I think this is more important. We see the physical breakdown, right? The way that they are starting to break down after all this time. We've seen it in both of the other seasons, right? You know, we see Kim Johnson's legs swelling, right? And I love her little comment here. She's like, I can't wait till it gets to my breasts. I just have to panic because people tend to say, oh, Kim Johnson was boring. She is soft spoken, but she has some of these amazing one-liners, right? So she's
there is a line just before we get to that, by the way.
Yeah, please.
Which is on the end of the lion sequence, and it's something that there's clearly sort of confessional done afterwards with Ethan, and he says that he feels vulnerable sharing the land with the lions, and I think, you know, that is the closest that this season comes to literally treading on the toes of the Lion King. But it's quite a poignant and quite a beautiful statement.
It's so funny because at the beginning, I'm just reacting because I'm laughing. The first couple of episodes of Africa, you were just going off on, all the Lion King stuff, and now you're coming around that
I'm not coming around. I'm saying that line is poignant. Basically, I just adore anything that Ethan does. So Ethan, Ethan can redeem any of my criticisms.
Right.
All hail to Ethan.
Yeah, basically, Tim does not like Lion King stuff unless it's Ethan, right? Ethan can do no wrong. That's
it.
Tim, are you anti Lion King?
I am actually. Yes, I find it very boring. I fall asleep every time I watch it. There's some brilliant animation, but it's just seems to me to be a dull, rambling story. And so anything that tries to reproduce that, I find irritating. And so the moment that Survivor becomes dull and rambling, I think Lion King, and then we have these shots. And I think Lion King. But sometimes these episodes are really tight and well focused, and I think that's down to Ethan sort of channeling Lion King. That I don't mind.
Is he Simba? Is Ethan Simba?
Ethan can be any character he wants to be. I'm quite happy. Yeah. Simba, Pumbaa, whatever. He can even be Rafiki, and I
Well, Tim did say, I think, in our third episode, that he thought that at that point, this is the episode where. Sorry, I should have been prepared for this. Linda goes home in the fourth episode. So, but just before that, it was either the third or the fourth episode. Tim said that he thought that the two people who are most likely to make it to the end / win would be Ethan and Linda. Right now, we know how Linda fared. With Ethan, I think I even asked you there because at this point, Ethan had done very little at that point, really, in the episodes. I think that basically Tim might like Ethan for the same reason that I like Ethan. Right. He's dreamy. He's got the Jufro. So for both of us, I think Ethan can do no wrong.
But there is something else. And that is that very often when we're discussing television, we get sidetracked into thinking that it's all about what you say. And television, like the best drama, is not about what you say. It's about how you respond and how you are and how you sort of project the personality of you. And Ethan is simply, hands down, the greatest performer that we have seen in 3 seasons so far. He could say nothing, and he draws attention. This isn't a looks thing, because Colby tried so hard to do that and didn't quite manage it.
So it's a charisma thing.
He was just a tooth advert.
Yeah, it's a charisma thing. It's not just a looks thing.
Absolutely.
But either way. Yeah.
And I think the good thing about and Tim, I think the great thing about Ethan is that strategically, he's placed himself in an alliance where he's not the biggest target. That's clearly Lex, because Lex is like the outwardly strategic. We're going to do this. I'm going to be the leader. So he's placed himself in this alliance where he's not looked at as one of like the bottom feeders, but he's not looked at as the biggest target either, which is a good place to be. Like kind
because
of
people can't. I don't understand why people can't see this. If I were in Survivor, I'm afraid Ethan would be my number one. The number one person I would take out if I wanted to win. I wouldn't want to win. I would want him to win. I'd want to help. But if I wanted to win, Ethan would be my number one target, and he would have been my number one target from episode 3.
I mean, T-Bird did try it. Like I said before, I think she would have been trying to target Lex if he hadn't won immunity.
This is today.
I mean, there's a reason that she went after Ethan over like Big Tom or Kim Johnson.
Right.
I liked T-Bird until today.
We will get there. We will get there. I'm gonna have to crap the wick on you.
Sorry.
No, it's fine, Tim. So when we get back to this thing, sorry. One other side note with Dr. Mike, this whole idea about the Ethan love. One of the reasons I had asked Dr. Mike months ago for this particular episode, because Dr. Mike has a son named Ethan. Right. And
we all should have.
Yes. And he lives in the same, he used to live in the same apartment. It's the same area, I think, in New York City.
I do spiritually. Yeah.
But so I understand, Jordan, I'm assuming you've heard this also. So
Yeah.
the point is that I wanted Dr. Mike specifically for this episode because it is so heavily Ethan.
Mm-hmm.
And this does include my favorite Ethan moment and probably one of my top 5 moments in all of Survivor, which both of you can probably guess, but we'll get there in a second. Back to the whole thing with the physical breakdown. We can just see, and again, we've seen this in other series, and we will continue to see it, that they're moving slowly. Their skin is a mess, from the bug bites and the brambles, and, they're getting thinner. And, Tom, looks at himself and says, I've probably lost, 40 pounds. Now, this is one little peek behind the curtain. We'll see this at the end, but Tom actually lost 80 pounds out there on Survivor.
Wow.
So they're, and then they're talking about the food, that their options are corn mush, corn broth soup, and roasted corn kernels, right? And they're having a hard time getting all that down. Again, because they can't fish, they're not allowed to hunt or fish.
Mm-hmm.
Is the chicken not laying any eggs?
Yeah. I assume that if they were, continuing to eggs, we would see it. Or what do you think, Jordan? Or maybe they just drop an occasional egg. I have no idea.
I'm not a chicken expert, Dan, but I have. I'm not sure. I don't know what the chickens are doing. Right. I think if you're that hungry at this point, maybe you just eat the chicken. Give yourself some protein for the next challenge. But
right. And again, what they're laying one egg for now. It's going to be 6 people. It's not much food, right?
No.
They're basically living almost entirely on the corn kernels and then whatever they can get from a reward.
And the food really does look a lot worse on the season than when you have rice. At least, white rice is bland, but at least it's white rice. I mean, it's fine. Right. This looked really gross.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd be able to get this stuff down. And then also the water we know has to be even worse because even though they're boiling it, it's still got elephant dung in it. So I'm sure it doesn't smell great. I mean, that's why Jessie got dehydrated and had to leave, right? She couldn't get the water down. It's hard to get the food down, So we have heard that, like Australian Outback, this is one of those seasons where, they were really worried about the contestants' well-being. And that's why I think they're finally they're trying to walk this line of you want people to be uncomfortable, right? But if they get too uncomfortable, A, you're afraid about their long-term well-being, and B, they stop producing good TV. Mm-hmm. Because when you are hungry and you're just lying around, that does not make great TV. So, and again, put a pin in this. I think this might be one of the reasons why things like the auction were added to Survivor. Right? Because it gives everybody an opportunity to eat, so they will continue to make good TV. We'll talk about this more when we get there, but I think that's why they're telling us about how bad the whole food situation is. Right?
Yeah. And the auction is also a fun way to really, and the players actually mentioned this. I think it was was it Lex or Ethan who had the confessional after the auction where they were they were able to see who's close with who by who's pulling money.
Right.
So it's not only a way to get food and to sort of have a fun challenge. That's not really a challenge. It's an auction. It's a way to see what the dynamics are, and not just the big alliance, but like the sub alliances within the big alliance.
Oh yeah. Yeah, again, I'm trying because I'm trying to make the show more organized. I'm trying to keep this in chronological order, but no, that's a huge deal. But my point is just, I think that's why they might have shown us how hungry they were and how it is affecting them physically, right? Mm-hmm, for sure. Anything just on this, Tim, before we move on to Tom and Ethan talking about Lex?
No.
Okay. So then the next thing we see is Tom and Ethan having this talk about Lex and the alliance. And this is where Ethan says, Tim, what you were flagging, that he said he wanted to play alone, but he said it's impossible to play this game alone. Now, people have won it, again, talking about things like the immunity idol, right? People have won this way, right? By having everybody else on the tribe wanting them out and not being able to get rid of them. And even with the immunity idol, we get some of this with Lex, right? Because I do think also maybe this would have been yet another time that Lex might have been vulnerable. But so the social game is very, very important. And Ethan is right that, I would argue you can't, it's very hard to get to the end without the social game. But I'm thinking like Mike Holloway, again, you can do it, but you just have to be really, really good at winning individual immunity / the immunity idol. Ethan is 95% right? You can't play this game alone. It's much more difficult, I would say. Mm-hmm. Jordan, what do you think? I mean, am I right about this or wrong about this?
Yeah, it's very hard to go on an immunity run. You don't know what the challenges are going to be. You could be you could be the best athlete out there, and then you have a puzzle and you could be horrible at puzzles and you're out. So you can't bank on the fact that you're going to go on an immunity run, get to the end and win the game. You have to have contingency plans, which are your alliances. You have to have people that are going to have your back and not want to vote you out. So I do think that it's very hard to win Survivor on your own. And even in some of the examples where you have winners who have went on challenge runs and found a lot of idols, they also had allies in the game that allowed them to get to the merge, or at least past the first couple votes in the merge. So I would agree with the statement. You can't play Survivor alone. I think maybe the closest was Ozzy, potentially, who came close.
But you say Ozzy, I say Mike Holloway or Ben.
Ozzy still had his I-24, but he was sort of the loner within his I-24, and I think that he wasn't really looking at the game in terms of alliances in his first season. But still, he didn't win. So
we have to be careful because again, we don't want to spoil Tim. Right? Tim has only seen Survivor up to this episode. Yeah, completely. And I know, Tim, you're going to say you're going to forget by the time we get there, but don't want to take the risk.
Forget the last minute of what I just said. I don't.
No, it's totally fine because again, I do think it's not by the time we get to Ozzy, I don't think he's going to remember. But that's might be you. Look, you certainly have a much, much, much better chance of winning the game if you have some social game going on. And then also when you do get to the end, you still need to get people to vote for you. And this is what you were saying, Tim, that having this kind of friendship and this just real human connection with people is certainly going to help you, especially, if it's close. So yeah, you need both. Ethan, and I get Ethan's morals were right. He didn't want to mess with alliances. He didn't have to worry about lying, but he realized, and I think he's right, you basically cannot win this game. So Ethan is concerned about what Lex did. He told us. Tom is a little bit more, he's saying something a little stronger. He says, look, I'm still tight with Ethan and Kim, but I don't really trust Lex anymore. And he says, I'm not going to vote him off. He says, I don't know what will happen in the future, right? He's kind of, leaving his options open, which I think is the right thing to do. But he says, I got a question with Lex, meaning I don't really trust the guy anymore.
Just for my sort of advice for the future, I think Ethan overplays his hand here. And I think he could very easily, if he hadn't got that charisma, as you put it, he could very easily slide into negative territory because he like last week, he's again being seen to be negative about a particular person. And that's not a good image.
Yep, exactly.
Sorry, just Karen, one more thing about the potential of, of voting for Lex here. I think for Frank, for T-Bird, for Kim, getting rid of one of those Baran guys is something that you have to do if you want to get to the end of the game. But for Big Tom and Ethan, I already just said it before, Lex is a huge shield for both of them. And if you look at the numbers, there's 7 people here. You have 4 people who were on the original Baran. You have 3 people who were on the original Samburu. If you were to flip on Lex here, that's the potential now for a 3-3 tie. And then you have to look at the spot that you put Kim Johnson in. If you have Lex out of the game, and it's just those 2 guys, Ethan and Tom, who probably become the favorites to win if Lex is out of the game. And you could argue that they might be the favorites even with Lex in the game, you lose your numbers then, and you might lose Kim Johnson, who could very easily flip to the Samburus and work with Kim and Frank and T-Bird, because she might say, look, this is wide open now. Why would I go to the end with Big Tom and Ethan, who are, playing this like outwardly pretty dominant game? And I could go with these sort of floater type characters.
We don't
have a chance to win.
We don't have to we don't have to speculate, because later in the episode, that is exactly what we see.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan, you can't rely on Frank. You're assuming that Frank is somebody you can negotiate with. You can't.
No, I don't rely on Frank as a good Survivor player. I mean, he's playing. I don't even know if you could say that Frank is necessarily playing a game. I think he's out there for like a wilderness adventure. But I'm saying from the perspective of Lex and Big Tom, I think that from the perspective of Ethan and Big Tom, I think that getting rid of Lex, while in the short term it might feel good, you got rid of this guy who is you're sort of losing trust within your alliance. You're also getting rid of a big shield for you and a number for you. So I think from the perspective of those two players, it doesn't make sense. For Frank, it does make sense, but again, you're right. Can you really rely on Frank to do the logical game move?
Again. I need to wrap both of you, the knuckles on both of you guys. Let me do this my own way. No, Jordan, I'm reacting to some, comments we've gotten from the fans that the show kind of tends to meander. So I am now trying wrapping all the guests on the knuckles and keeping this discussion going chronologically. That may not be what we land on. And as always, I always tell people we love feedback, especially if it can even be negative as long as it's polite. So maybe I am being too strict here. I'm just trying to prevent us from going in circles. The next thing we see,
I thought you liked the circle.
I love the circle. And Tim and I had a great time going around in circles discussing these episodes until we realized that people were not happy. So now we are trying to do this in a slightly different way, and we are still tweaking the format. But so maybe I've choked with Tim about bringing my gavel, and banging on the table. I was never a judge, but I do have gavels that are debate trophies. So I do have a gavel in the other room. I should just warn you guys. But the next thing we get to see, this is one of the great, things that I've already flagged it. It's the auction, right? We get this little tree, the tree mail, and it's a little pig of some sort. And then Tom asks it, what's the difference between me and a pig? There's no boil on the pig. I had to turn on the sound bite, the subtitles to get that. It's not just his accent. He said it very quickly, but it was cute. And yes, it is the auction. Query whether production realized that they needed food. Maybe they realized that during Australian Outback. So they have now built this into and for a long time, this happened on almost every season. It has not happened for a while because the auction basically was broken by a game element. We'll get to that later, but for in future seasons, way in the future. But for right now, this is basically, it's not a reward challenge. It's just a reward, right? You get food, you can share food. You each get 20,000. I didn't write down the name of that. Was it a shilling of some sort? But you get local currency. Yeah, but you get local currency, and you can bid on food, and you can share as long as you pull money. So Probst is telling us you can't just share your food, but if they pay, then they can get bites of it, which is also important later because people will ask, like, why didn't they just share? This is how it's set up. And again, this gets tweaked over the years. But so now we can kind of just go quickly. We don't discuss all of these, but Lex gets coffee and a chocolate croissant. Kim Johnson gets cheese and crackers, right? Then Tom gets a beer, right? And he does his little beer dance, and he says, I can bid better with a little drink in me.
I mean, he was right. He did end up getting a lot of food at that auction. So maybe it was the liquid courage that allowed him to get the breakfast.
Well, he got courage from somewhere because this is again when we start to see, and we'll break this down more a little bit. Tom is playing the game here. And then we get, Kim Powers gets a sun. This was a covered item, right? I think she gets a sundae with a little cup of syrup.
She does indeed. She does indeed.
Maybe that one was not right.
I do think a sundae is one of the most repulsive things that has ever been invented by God. You know,
You don't like ice cream
that was
sundaes?
obviously a ninth day invention. I think they are disgusting. They look horrible. Any sort of dripping chocolate to start with, I just think, that's from the wrong end of the process.
I am a sundae fan. If I'm out there on Survivor, I'm definitely not bidding on the sundae that you have to eat it's probably a very hot day, I would assume.
I promise, Jordan, if we're bidding against each other, it's yours.
I don't want the sundae on Survivor. I want like the burger or the breakfast or something with some protein.
That's what I was going to say. As much as I also love ice cream sundaes. Yes, they're messy.
Oh, I like them at home. Yeah,
right, exactly. But I don't know that I would bid on Survivor because I feel the same thing. If you give me sugar on an empty stomach, right, even just on day to day, I will feel great for an hour and then I will crash.
Don't you think Ethan gets a huge sugar rush in this whole process, doesn't he? He eats nothing but sugar.
And again, you have to, you don't know what the items are going to be. And Probst tells you, the auction can end at any time. So there is an argument to just, it's food and get whatever you can get. But given the choice, right? Of course, I would always prefer to have something with protein. And even like in terms of the rewards that they give people on Survivor, just in general with these chocolate rewards, of course, I'm sure I would eat it because it's calories and but it's a double-edged sword. But Kim P is very happy to get the sundae with a cup of chocolate syrup on the side. Ethan tries to pay her for a bite. She says no. And then what's the next item? A mug of chocolate syrup, right?
That's worse than your sundae, Jordan.
I agree with that. I mean, I like chocolate syrup or like hot fudge. I'm a fan of it. But again, if that's the only thing you're getting, I don't even know why Ethan would buy that. I guess he's a chocoholic or something.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
it's not what I would want.
But melted chocolate is different to a bar of chocolate, isn't it?
I'd rather have the bar of chocolate.
Yeah.
I'd be very happy drinking a mug of hot fudge. But again, the problem is then I would just be, I'd be flying for an hour, and then for the rest of the day, I would just be like lying on the floor.
Can I interject for a second? Because I suddenly realized, with reference to your judge and gavel, do you know there's a big difference between a British tradition and American tradition? In American tradition, your judge bangs his gavel. In Britain, they don't, but an auctioneer does.
So judges don't have gavels in Britain, or they have them but they don't use them?
I think they have them but they don't use them. But an auctioneer does. An auctioneer, it's part of the process is to bang the gavel.
Yeah, we have that also. It also
you do. You do. So I think Probst should have a gavel.
I served as an auctioneer once at my.
Did you really?
At my sleepaway camp. It wasn't a real auction.
Can you do the patter?
I think I did it on stage. I probably drank a lot of coffee before doing it. $1, $2 from Kip, I'm on the bow tie, $3 from Karen.
Wonderful.
I don't know how good that was. I think I probably did it better on stage that night. But it was an auction at my camp where we were auctioning like I think it was things like breakfast in bed and things like that you could do at camp.
And it's too bad I never learned to do this. I could do that because I used to be able to speak over 300 words a minute. This is one of the things that I lost with the stroke. I can no longer just, because I was in high school debate and I did not do this kind of debate. But anyway, the first speech in every debate was just basically a script that you would read, and they would read it as fast as possible because it was not about performance. It was just, you have to get the topics, on the flow, as they would call it. You just have to just point people to these arguments. And so they would literally go that fast, and and people would practice. Right. They used to call it spreading, right? Spreading the dot as fast as you could. I could pick up something that I'd never seen before and spread it faster than the person who had been doing it all year. Wow. So yes, this used to be one of my weird, useless talents that unfortunately I have now lost. But even like the songs that, I'm trying to think like, there are various songs that require
songs. Patter songs. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So the modern Major General.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So again, that's one of my lost talents.
It's all about having your D's and T's and your
and again used to be very good at that. Unfortunately, no longer. But the fun thing, but just back to the chocolate syrup, is that Ethan gets a mug of chocolate syrup, which is what he really wanted, and he ends up paying significantly less, right, than Kim paid for that sundae. So she's happy, she gets what she wants, but I don't know that she was so happy when she saw that Ethan got something better for cheaper.
That's right. I'm not sure chocolate syrup and a beard goes well together. Thank God Ethan's beard is dark. I would just look at,
Is that one of the other reasons you would never drink something like that, because it would be?
There are certain things I just do not do. I don't eat spaghetti bolognese because it's just you can't tell the difference between the beard and the spaghetti.
Jordan, you're also a man with a beard.
Yeah, I do eat a lot of spaghetti bolognese. I don't think my beard. Yeah, I make it. I eat it. It's an easy thing to make at home. I don't think my beard restricts me from eating anything that I want to eat, including chocolate syrup, spaghetti bolognese, soup. I eat soup.
Oh, you're a braver man than I.
I don't eat a lot of soup. I mean, if it gets on my face, I wash it off. But you have a much longer beard than I do, so maybe.
Right. And also, it's
more
white.
difficult for you.
I think it's both. It's longer and it's white. Yeah.
It's the Gandalf moment. You don't see Gandalf eating, do you?
No.
That's it. Gandalf, the Queen, and Tim. You just don't see them eating.
Yeah. Karen, I have a question about this auction for you, because you have the perspective of someone who's seen all of the Survivor seasons. Would modern Jeff ever allow Kim Johnson and Kim Powers to hold their own auctions within the Survivor auction? Like once Kim Johnson bought the fried chicken and Kim Powers is trying to auction off like a taste of her sundae. There's no way Jeff ever allows this on Modern Survivor. He doesn't take a backseat to anyone at these things.
Right. Again, no, they were playing with the format, but this is but he laid out that, you can, right. Cause you said you can share food as long as you could say, right. You share food if you bid together, but you can't sell bites. I guess like this was good TV. And so they allowed it, but I don't know that they ever, right. But they wouldn't allow it now.
No, there's no way.
He still came in at the end, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He banged the gavel down. He wanted it over. You saw like the seeds baby of Jeff Probst turning into the control freak Jeff Probst.
Yes,
but you kind of need to be able to.
I don't think there was any doubt that was there, but he tries to do it. He tries to mask it all with a smile, but there's no doubt that the backbone is thrust forward. I am the star.
Kind of like what I'm trying to do on this podcast.
Oh, sorry. Come on.
No, you're doing great now. I'm just saying previously that is control freak is exactly the word you're looking for. I am becoming a control freak because I feel like it's probably best for this show. But yes, I'm a control freak. I own it. I'm a control freak in my real life also. I might as well just come on. My name is Karen, right? I mean, like that should go without saying. So then we get the next mystery item. Right. So Kim Johnson gets fried chicken and mashed potatoes. Right. And this is where we see Lex's, ruthlessness, if you will. And there's a minor thing, but also missing the social cues here. Right. T-Bird makes it clear that this is really what she wants. Right. In terms of getting part of Kim's meal, but Lex ends up getting it. Right. She just because it's like a mini auction within the auction. Right. Where you understand what I'm trying to say, Jordan, even though the words are not coming out. So what did you think? I mean, does this show something about them as players?
I think that it shows it does sort of reflect the way that they played the game. I mean, we saw it in this episode. I mean, actually, I know Tim's, we'll get to this of how T-Bird played the end of this episode, but I think that T-Bird does a good job, but maybe sometimes gets a little bit too complacent of like sitting back and letting the game come to her, which is what she did to the chicken. And she ended up not getting the chicken. Lex is the one who's going to be in your face strategy. I'm going to make T-Bird bid her money. And if she doesn't bid her money, I'm going to get the chicken. So I do think it sort of reflects both of their personalities very well at the auction.
Yeah. Thank you for saying what I was trying to say. Yeah. And then the next thing we have there, but for T-Bird does get food, right? The next thing is a meatball hoagie with cheese. T-Bird and Frank split it. And, even though she didn't get the fried chicken and mashed potatoes, Probst asks her, how was it? And this is again, one of those T-Bird quotes that, people still remember. She says, good enough to make you want to slap your mama. Right. Which I guess in Southern means it's good.
I guess. And look, I think to me, the big winners of the auction in terms of the food items that they got were, clearly Big Tom, because he got the big breakfast at the end. That
we're going to get there.
We'll get there. I think that the fried chicken is a good meal. Like I would have wanted that if I were on Survivor. That was like a lot of chicken and potatoes that look great. And then the hoagie is going to be filling. So I think those were really the big things that I would have wanted, more so than a beer, more so than ice cream. The beer would have been nice.
Beer would have been fun, but again, like not really great for your game.
No, definitely not.
And also chugging a beer when you haven't eaten in a month. I mean, at least for me, they would have to carry me back to the Boma after that. And then we get, this is, the last item. This is the mystery item. Ethan and Baum bid together, and Tom wins it. And so, Tim, you have not flagged this. I had kept saying that, this is my favorite, moment, one of my top moments on Survivor. You didn't flag this, Tim. I'm disappointed in you because I said, as a Jew, this whole thing about, so they bid together. Tom wins it. And Tom does this thing. He pretends that Probst, he says, you did me wrong. I'll kill you. And then he says, I'll kill you after I kiss you. And they open it up and it's a breakfast and it's pancakes. And I think there's grits and there's ham and there's bacon. And so Tom is very happy. And then Tom is even happier when he realizes that, and this is my favorite moment, right? Ethan, he's a Jew, right? He won't eat the ham. And Ethan is laughing, so hard at this, but also as our family, so we are, traditional Jews. And so when we was watching this, with my kids, it was very, very interesting to see somebody that even you're out on a show like Survivor, right? Where you are starving, right? And I would not have expected this, and I would not have said anything negative at all about Ethan, because I do think if you are somebody who keeps, some level of kashrut, as he clearly does, right? If you choose to play a game like this, you might very well just decide I'm going to suspend that, right? Because I'm starving out here. And I would have had no criticism of that at all. But the fact that he didn't do that, right? That really spoke to my kids, right? And to me, that you can keep your observance, right? While you also do things out in the world.
Show a lot of chutzpah.
Yeah, really, really.
It's very
amazing.
good. It's very good. I did find Tom's language uncomfortable.
Right. Well, let's talk about that.
I liked the point you make, and that was the point I took from it as well. Mm-hmm. So, and then I found you sent me a little piece from the book. So I'm afraid I watched it before I read.
It's fine. Talk about this for a minute. I just have to go plug my computer in. So talk about that. I sent Tim the funny 115 item for this moment in Survivor.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. So guys, talk about that. Talk about that.
So Tim, what were you saying about the?
I just found what Tom was saying was so borderline, it made me uncomfortable. But and I also thought in some ways that Ethan's response was a little bit overdone, maybe. But actually, the overall message was very positive, and it was exactly the message that Karen has identified. So although I felt uncomfortable in some ways, I on the balance. In balance, it was a good moment, and Tom was charming. Actually, thank God, the program showed the whole of Tom's comments because it put it into context. I think in today's sort of shows, they would have just taken the first bit, and Tom would have been destroyed.
Well,
but to let it play out.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally understand that. And Kim Powers also had some concerns afterward that episode. But, I'm a Jew. Jordan is a Jew. I don't know. I don't want to speak for you. But for me, I had no problem with it at all. It is a statement of fact. He's a Jew, right? He won't eat the ham. We thought it was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious.
It's the context.
Exactly.
And
it could be
quite so dangerous. It could have backfired so badly, and basically Tom put his life and his reputation in the hands of the editors, and the editors were very good to him. Frankly, they just let that edit play out, and thank God it did.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if you were to look at his comment on a piece of paper, you would say this and say, "Oh, this guy is an anti-Semite." But when you look at the relationship that Tom and Ethan had, I think it's clear to me. You don't see it on the show, but I'm sure it's clear that they've talked about the fact that that Ethan is kosher in Africa, like in their camp, because if not, like not every Jewish person is kosher. I'm a Jewish person. I'm not kosher. So Tom wouldn't have even necessarily known this if he wasn't close with Ethan. By his tone, by Ethan's reaction, you could tell that they're good friends. Tom was not Tom wasn't making fun of Jewish people here. He was making fun of Ethan for the fact that he couldn't eat part of the meal that they just bought. So I think there's no malicious intent here by Tom. I don't think there's anything problematic here. I think it's based on their relationship. I think that this is fine. As a Jewish person, I wasn't offended.
Yeah, and I also think that Ethan is, again, most Jews do not keep kosher these days, I think, to any extent. Ethan clearly keeps it to some extent because he wouldn't eat ham. But interestingly, back earlier in the season, he did drink blood. Which is really a much bigger prohibition. But again, I think the thing with Jews and pork is it is a kind of a cultural thing for many people, that even if you don't really keep kosher, they specifically just won't eat pork. And I'm assuming that there was a conversation about this, right? So that Tom knew instantly he's a Jew, he won't eat the ham. There must have been a conversation where Ethan said, yeah, I won't eat pork. So yeah, given all that background, yes, you're right. On paper, there's many things that on paper look horrible and are fine in context. But especially this particular statement, if you look at the words he said, he said, he's a Jew, he won't eat the ham. That's true, right? And it was said, again, in a very... obviously, I'm sure there's ways that.
But people can say things. People can say things which are true, Karen, as we know, and simply by stating a true fact, you're also saying something which is prejudicial and blah blah blah. It's the context, and what I'm saying here is thank God for these editors who put this in context, and it's very, very supportive. And extraordinarily sympathetic.
Yeah, I mean, Ethan is laughing so hard he looks like he's going to pee himself, and that was also our reaction when we watched it.
Yeah, I felt he was overdoing that, but that's beside the point.
To me, it's one of the funniest moments in the history of the show. It's like Survivor Africa is. I have a lot of nostalgia for it because of how old the season is, and because I like a lot of the characters who went far in the game. I don't think it's a great game of Survivor. I don't think it's a great season of Survivor. If you're just looking at like the game dynamics and the strategy and everything. But in terms of like these character scenes that you do get from people like Lex and Big Tom and Ethan, I do think that this was one of the best moments, especially from the early seasons of Survivor. And it's something that I remember watching this live, and I thought it was hilarious. My whole family, I used to watch Survivor with mainly with my mom. I think this was at the point where was my dad still? I don't even know if my dad is still watching Survivor at this point. He may have quit after one season. But we were laughing. We thought it was hilarious. And I don't think that Tom did anything or said anything that was offensive. Maybe there were people watching the show who did take offense, and that's their right. But it was clearly just like a friendship moment between Tom.
Yeah, and I don't think he was playing it up, Tim. I mean, at least I think Jordan and I both had. It really was incredibly funny. Maybe it is because we are Jews. Right. But I do think that he was just that tickled. Right. And the whole combination of factors. On the one hand, it's true he's not going to be able to eat half the meal. And that's what Tom is celebrating. Right. But on balance, like I said, I think it's fantastic. And it is like when I sent that funny 113, funny 115 thing to Tim, I sent to Tim. This is number 2 in that 115. Is considered to be one of the top comedic moments in Survivor. And yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
If I'm Ethan here, I am negotiating for my food though. I'm getting 2/3 of those pancakes, because if you can't eat the ham, I feel like he should get more of the pancakes.
Oh yeah. I assumed he ate all the pancakes.
They never show it. It doesn't really matter, but we have to find out.
They did show him licking the plate.
Yeah, if I'm on Survivor, I lick the plate when I'm home and I'm not starving. So I think I would definitely lick the plate on Survivor.
But again, this is why I think the auction is so popular and why many Survivor fans are annoyed that it is no longer part of the game. I think that they should bring the auction back, Jordan, just like this, with no game advantages, and just tell people, right, there's not going to be a game advantage. This is just a way to give you some food. Right.
Here's the thing.
Did everybody end up eating?
Yes, everybody ends up eating.
Yeah, because Frank shared the
Frank's cared with right.
T-Bird. Everyone had something, which isn't always the case in the Survivor auction. What I've always thought, Karen, I agree that they should bring it back, and I think they should tell them up front, There's going to be no advantages, no idols, no game advantages, no clues or extra votes or whatever is in the game now. I would not hate it being connected potentially to the loved one's visit, which they have done before. They did that in Token Sheens. They've done that in certain seasons. And I think that brings then, the politics of the game where who bids on their loved one, who saves money to potentially get their loved one, and then the person who wins the loved one, whose other loved ones do they allow to come to camp or go on the reward or whatever. I think there is a way to make it interesting like that, where it's not purely just who's getting a hamburger, who's getting a pizza, whatever. I think there is a way to make it interesting without putting game advantages, because that just breaks the auction.
Right. But it still kind of breaks the auction in the same way. Like I said, people are still trying to. I feel like it is more powerful just to have it be a character moment. I mean, and maybe because this one was so good, and maybe it would be very boring if you did that generally.
If I'm on Survivor and I see that like my mom is there and then there's a cheeseburger, I'm bidding on the cheeseburger. And I'll tell you why. It's not because I would rather have the cheeseburger than see my mom. My mom's a huge Survivor fan. She would love to be out there. My thing with the family reward is you don't want to win the family reward. You want to be taken on the family reward. So if the person who wins chooses my mom, great. If they don't choose my mom, then I realize that this person does not want me to go to the end of the game with them.
Right. And we will talk about this next week as the family visit, quote unquote, as it is in Africa. And so you certainly could put those together, Jordan. I guess the only fear would be that people who are not that smart, right? People are just going to wait to win the family visit, just like people used to wait for the game advantage. Right. And then we would just have people, basically what happened to him is people just wouldn't bid on food items at all because they were saving their money for whatever the other thing was.
And that's a Survivor fan. My mom would get if I bid on a cheeseburger over her. She would understand the strategy behind it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's just a separate point of Survivor strategy, right? You never ever want to win the family. I've had this conversation with my son because there had been some discussion about him possibly applying for the show. Hasn't happened yet, partly with COVID, but I already told him, I said, if I, and I would be the loved one. And I said, don't you dare win. Like I said, if somebody wants to bring you, that's totally fine.
That's great, yeah.
Right. But I do not expect you to win this. Don't even think about it. Absolutely. So now we see the aftermath of the auction. And this is what we started to talk about before, that Lex is the kind of guy, Lex is always thinking and watching. And he says, this shows the alliance lines, right? Kim Powers is pretty much alone. T-Bird and Frank have each other, and then it's the other four. And then the other thing that was interesting was that Tom, Tom played hard, right? He was not afraid to outbid T-Bird. And I had a note here that I wanted to say the difference with Tom is that Tom wanted the food more than the social game. Whereas Lex was very much aware of all of the social dynamics, but again, not enough. He's aware of the social dynamics, but he still kind of stepped on T-Bird when she wanted the fried chicken. So that's just help me untangle this, both of you, Tim, Jordan. What do you think of both of this? Both what Lex did, what Tom did, how it does show the social dynamics. Any comments on that?
I think Lex showing in his confessional that he's aware of the social dynamics does speak to his game. And to me, you're not able to play an effective strategic game if you don't have a social game. So while Lex is, again, I've said he's brash, he's in your face, I still think that the people out there like him to an extent. He's not one of these people who goes on Survivor and everyone hates him. Like I've heard people come off the show who they were very wary of Lex. They didn't necessarily trust him, but they did like him on a personal level. So I don't think that getting the chicken was that big of a deal, especially since T-Bird ends up getting more food. So she's probably not even really thinking about it. I think that this is a positive moment for Lex, where we see that he is very observant and very aware of what's going on in the game. And if again, I think he potentially could be in trouble if he doesn't win immunity here, but I think he's built strong enough relationships where even if he didn't win immunity, he would have gotten some heat. But I don't think that there were enough people to turn on him had he lost. I do think it's a possibility, and more of a possibility than them turning on Ethan. Oh
yeah, I don't think that anybody's going to vote him off just because of this, but just just comparing how T-Bird dealt with it, where she kind of backed off even though she really wanted it. And again, like you said earlier, that just shows the difference between how the two of them play the game.
If Lex did not win immunity and got voted off in this episode because either Kim Johnson or maybe even his two biggest allies in Big Tom and Ethan, if they turned on him, it would have had nothing to do with the chicken or the auction. It would have had everything to do with the Brandon vote.
Right. Right. And they do show us again, and we've just talked about this before, Tim, that, Tom is, he kind of wants everybody to think he's a hayseed, and that is, part of who he is, but he is also much smarter than he wants people to know. We see Tom and Ethan playing checkers, and they're making fun, and and Ethan says this in a confessional, like they make fun of each other. Ethan is a Jew and Tom is fat and he has a boil on his neck. And then we see that Tom wins checkers, and apparently Tom wins checkers a lot. And that tells us two things. He's competitive and he's not dumb.
Yes, I have a question there.
Please.
Who made the checkers board?
I don't remember. I don't know if they showed that.
They didn't show us.
It could have been an early episode. I don't know.
It's been made by. It's a handmade thing, isn't it?
It's made by the contestants. This is not something and they have to do it with everything that they have. So I'm assuming that the color on the checkers was, that we know that they had some color. Could you figure out what all these things were? Because I couldn't. But this is definitely something that they have made. It's a homegrown game, and they make games on these shows all the time.
Yeah, I think that's something that we really should have seen. I think that was a wonderful moment, and I would have liked to have seen more of the backstory of that, and perhaps some of the less of the other stuff. But I like that. I also liked. I think it's very interesting when somebody like Tom sort of dances and is happy. It suddenly gives you a vision into somebody's life, and we warm to Tom. I warm to Tom so much more today. So my mind has changed about two of the characters.
Yeah, I think I think Tim was a bit mystified at the beginning of the season because it was clear that I had a lot of fondness for both Lex and Tom, and Tim is like, why? And I'm saying, but you are realizing now, because again, obviously I came into this episode with the experience.
I still haven't come around to your view about Lex, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, you don't have to like him, but at least you understand why he's a big character. And again, I am more of a strategist than you are, so I am more. I just have
to tell myself, is he Lex Luthor or is he part of Alexandros the Great? I just don't know, and
well, you're not expected to know yet because it's not the end of the season. He has not left yet, so
he's going to leave because he cannot vanquish Ethan. Ethan has the mark of God on him, so he's. I will go out and stick my head.
No. So I'm literally writing this down because Ethan has the mark of God on him is something that we are actually going to discuss at the end of this season. It is more true than you know. Yes.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry.
I don't even know what you're referring to.
I don't know what we're talking about.
You're not familiar with, now I'm going to have a brain fart, not remember the Follow the Star. You haven't heard about Follow the Star, Jordan?
No. What is
No, you wouldn't know. Tim, we're going to discuss it at the end of the season. Jordan, you never heard about Follow the Star? All right, I will tell you. We will discuss this after the show offline.
Okay.
Because Mario and I discussed it before the season. He really wanted to just bring it up, but he was on for the premiere, Mario Lanza, of the Funny 113.
Funny 115.
I don't know why I keep saying Funny 113. It's Funny 115. You're right. So he wanted us to discuss it at the beginning of the season. There was no way that we could do it without spoiling Tim. So we will talk about it at the end. And yes, Jordan, I'm happy to explain this too. It's a very, very interesting little bit of Survivor trivia. But the point here with Tom is that Tom is a lot smarter than he wants us to think. And we see Kim Powers, Kim Johnson, and Lex all say in confessional, this guy is smarter than he lets on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next thing we see is they go to the water hole to get water and shower. And we see these, people getting comfortable with each other, showering each other, pouring water over each other. They don't really care who sees anymore. And then we have this moment with Tom where, again, some people have some opinions about that, is Tom having a little too much fun? In 2021, I would argue Tom is having a little bit too much fun. In 2001, I think this was fine, right? Everybody is laughing. Kim Johnson says he's harmless. If he gets a peek, who cares, right? The game is getting along and going with the flow. And that's what's making me think that in 2021, women don't just get along and say that a man is harmless. And if he gets a peek, who cares? I agree with Kim Johnson. I don't think there's anything wrong with this, but what do you guys think?
I mean, I think you have to go based on the reaction of the women, because I mean, that's really like, everything with Survivor, without spoiling Island of the Idols. There was obviously an incident in that season where the reaction of the women was one of great discomfort. And I don't want to go into it.
It's happened. Come on, it happened in Thailand. It happened on All Stars.
Yeah, it's happened on multiple seasons. So I think,
but Jordan,
yeah.
Jordan, you go along with what is sort of socially expected at the time, and that may not be what is correct.
Oh, I agree with that too. But I'm just saying, like, based the women that were there were both Kims, and they just going based on what I saw from their reaction. And again, you don't see everything. It doesn't mean what Tom did was right or that his conduct was appropriate, but the fact that they seemed comfortable with what was going on. But again, they're playing a game where you have
that's what I was going to say. And women are socialized, and women are socialized.
Yeah, and I think that could be the problematic part, where they might not want to make it a big deal, but it is. So I don't know what they were really thinking in that moment. I mean, I don't think it was the best thing for Tom to do, clearly.
Yeah, like I said, I would be fine with it, but I am more comfortable with some of things like this, and maybe it's my age, but more comfortable than people who are my kids' age, who are probably, I'm sure there are people out there who are horrified in 2021. I agree. I also don't think it's a big deal. I think that they were really fine with it. And again, they've said, like, this is like family. We got very comfortable with each other. They have to. They're sleeping on top of each other. Ethan said, I changed my clothes. I don't really worry about who's looking, because it's a very primal. Yeah.
But you see, Karen, I think that sort of explains Ethan's laughing as well.
Okay. Speak. What are you talking about?
Well, Ethan,
that he was laughing. He was uncomfortable, but he was trying to laugh it off.
Well, no, I'm not saying he was necessarily uncomfortable. He just realizes this is supposed to be a joke, and he laughs. And I just think he sort of overdoes it because he's so keen. He wants to like Tom, and he wants us to like Tom, and Tom is coming very close to the edge of what is socially acceptable. And I think it's the same situation here. And I think the girls they like Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Tom is coming very close to what is socially unacceptable. Even then, it would definitely be socially unacceptable. Now, what would we do now? Because there are so many times when we like somebody who is doing something which is questionable. Mm-hmm. And when it's on camera, how do you pull them back?
Again, all I can say is I'm a Jew and a woman, and you are neither. So I am going to pull rank. Again, my personal experience is I think it's okay. No, again, the Ethan thing, given that I had the same reaction, Jordan had the same reaction, the world had the same reaction, right? That this was funny. I don't think he was just laughing it off. I think he was seriously about to pee his pants. Whereas here, I feel like this one is closer to the edge.
Yeah, I think these are two very different situations where I really think when you're looking at this in the context of a game where you don't want to do something that's necessarily going to either, cause an adverse reaction from another player, where if you are a woman, even if you feel uncomfortable in the situation, you might not say it. So I think that what Tom is doing is potentially putting another player in an uncomfortable situation. And just because we heard from the women and it seemed like they were okay with it, we don't know if that's the case. And if you're in Tom's position, you shouldn't be potentially putting people in that situation. So I would agree with Tim here. I think it's very different than the auction.
Yeah. That's just my take on it. Also, obviously, your mileage may vary. You can obviously believe whatever you think. I'm just saying that as a Jew and a woman, I see those two situations as very, very different. But that's just me. Now we get to the immunity challenge, and I'm ready to yada yada through this unless you guys have anything you want to say.
Lex wins immunity.
Yeah, they have to listen to a story. There are 7 questions. You have to get 5 of them correct. And they want to show some drama. So they show us Lex drops one of those leather straps that they needed that shows that you got a question correct. Then he finds it. Yay. And he wins, meaning he was way ahead. Right.
Very, very interesting that we get a story primarily about circumcision in the He's a Jew episode. So that was interesting.
That is great. I had not picked up on
I don't think Jeff Probst ever talks about circumcision on any other season.
Maybe he'd had enough of it in Africa after this episode. They were told no more circumcision talk.
I'm surprised they didn't cut it out, the circumcision talk.
Oh, bang, bang.
All right, so anything on that, Tim, or should we move on?
No, I did find that as a well. I'm always oddly entertained by memory tricks, but they don't make the greatest television, do they?
Right,
Really?
exactly. I think that's why they don't do these challenges all that often, if any. I'm not trying to think about more recent seasons. Yeah, these I think memory challenges are great in in shows like this, and they use them all the time in Big Brother. But I don't think they use them probably in Survivor anymore. Again, because just not great TV. What, Jordan? You have any other? What do you think? Same thing.
Like Spoon's immunity. It's not that interesting.
Okay, fine. So we'll move on that. No. Right. And then we get, Frank. We get another one of these montages about Frank. Frank loves being there. Right. And we see that beautiful shot of him silhouetted against the sunrise. He loves the environment and the animals and the people, of course. LOL. And he says, he wants to socialize, right? He wants to let people see the soft, sensual part of me. These are his actual words, in quotation marks. And I was laughing watching this because, personally, I don't really want to go there with Frank. I was going to say, Ethan, on the other hand, I would love to know more about the soft sensual part of Ethan.
That's what you call it, Freudian slip, Karen.
Freudian slip, yes. But then we get this, and so Frank decides he's going to socialize, right? So that people get to know him as a person. And how does he do that? He starts spouting off about the NRA. Right?
Yeah, not great, especially like you don't when you're on the chopping block. And I think we're in a situation here where we see the final vote and Frank votes for Kim Johnson. So there's this plan in place where they're potentially trying to get Kim Johnson to flip to their side. They clearly know by tribal council that they don't have her because Frank votes for Kim and T-Bird ends up voting for Frank. So I think that maybe he's just pissed off and he's trying to sour the mood because he's going home and he knows it. So I think that's possible here.
I don't think that's what it is. And I'll tell you what. So I was listening last night to T-Bird has a show on RHAP, Tim, called Talking with T-Bird, where she brings in people from these old seasons that people haven't heard from for a while. And I was just listening to, so T-Bird interviewed Frank back in the summer of 2020. And so this is based on this. It was a very interesting conversation because Frank's thing, this is what I was pointing to earlier, Tim, that Frank is, he was there for the experience, not so much to play the game. And he was going to be himself, right? So T-Bird's reaction on the show, on the episode is Frank, and it sounds like she reads the signals that others don't like it, but he really doesn't. Listening to this, interview 20 years later, I do think Frank, it's not that he was sour. He was thinking is, I am going to be me. This was his.
He's already done this, hasn't he, with the elephant?
Right. Trump. He's just going to continue to be himself. And yes, obviously, he's not really reading the room, but he also kind of doesn't care because he doesn't care about being voted off. Yeah. And he continues to say, he didn't expect to win. Apparently, his wife told him he was going to be the first one off because, again, he does not have great social skills. But he didn't care.
I know you're going to rap me on the knuckles for saying this, but his comments at the end demonstrate absolutely that he just isn't there.
Meaning he didn't care about winning? Because I was going to say some of the best experiences.
No, I don't think it's that he doesn't care. I think he does care because he's competitive. So I think say he doesn't care misses the point. The point is he just isn't there. He isn't in this group. Because this group isn't part of his people. He doesn't understand these people. He's just different. And this is why you find him sitting on his own. It's not that he's not competitive. He's terribly competitive. He's probably the most competitive person there. But why would you compete against people that you simply you just don't value in that way? And the things he values, we heard what he values at the end of the show. He values his wife and his daughter. That's it.
And they go deep. Like I said, some of the most the best experiences apparently he had in Africa were after the season. Again, this is based on this interview where when he came off, since we've already jumped ahead, that when he came off, you sit down and you talk to the psychologist, and then rather than going and eating with the rest of the contestants, whatever, they sent him to go hang out with some of the crew members.
And he'd be so happy.
Yes, but he did. And he bonded with them and they took him on a bunch of rides. They took him on a bunch of rides around, the savannah to see things. And he actually ended up naming his third daughter. Apparently his wife was pregnant with their third daughter. And he ended up naming her, and I should have written this down, but it was like the name of some lodge that they went to. So the point is, Frank came out here, like, it's funny, you say he's competitive. He might be competitive in life in general, right? He is. We saw them in that one, when he did the relay race with Brandon. But in terms of winning the game of Survivor, that is not what he was there for. And I do believe him on this. Just a few more quick notes on Frank, and then we'll get off of this. So Frank now has 7 daughters, 4 of them biological, 3 adopted, or foster children, I believe, that he then adopted.
Lovely.
And he really is, and he comes across really as much more human. And, when T-Bird asked him, she said, I think I know the answer to this, but would you play it again? And he said, I would absolutely play it again. I think it's an amazing game, but I would not change anything about myself. This is me, take it or leave it. And this is kind of how I am in my real life. And one of the reasons why I don't play a game like Survivor. But he would be very happy to go back and try to win the game. But this is me. I love the NRA. I'm a conservative. I'm a military guy, ex-military guy. Take it or leave it. The point is, I warmed to Frank a lot more after listening to this interview. And the only reason I did not send it to you, Tim, is because he does spoil the rest of the season. But
right. Don't worry. Can I just bark out my ignorance for 1 second? I think
Please.
I know. NRA? Acronym?
I'm sorry, National Rifle Association.
I thought it was.
He's a gun nut.
I thought it was. It's the Charlton Heston thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
He used to be
right.
Yeah,
he used to be the president of this.
Right, and he's just talking
about. I just wanted to double check.
Right, no, conservative politics in general, and again, T-Bird going back to Ethan. T-Bird can see, like, you can just see, and there's a shot where Frank and Ethan are sitting next to each other. Right, they're eating breakfast, and you can just see the reactions on their faces. And and T-Bird picks up on this very much so, and Frank just doesn't. Or again, I thought he just didn't pick up on it. I'm realizing now, I feel like he just didn't care. He knows he's going to go home. He does not care. He
doesn't care. Is that he doesn't pick up on it because would anybody else? Is there anybody else in that group who might belong to the NRA?
I think T-Bird could. T-Bird's quite conservative, I'm guessing. Right? I don't. But the thing is, T-Bird.
I've never really seen her talk politics.
I don't.
She is from the South, but I don't think. And again, her political views in 2001 may be completely different than they are now.
Right, but in 2001, I am guessing that one of the reasons that they bonded was that you're right. I've never talked politics with T-Bird, but my what I was always assuming was that they might have had similar. Probably not as conservative, but she was. I'm assuming she was somewhat conservative, just because, especially in 2001, if you were from Georgia. Right, you were a conservative. That is just starting to change here. Yeah. But she could read the room, right? And she didn't want to go home, and that's why she was saying to him, maybe you don't want to have this conversation on Tribal Council Day. But the difference between Frank and Teresa is that T-Bird wanted to win the $1 million, and Frank knew that he wasn't going to. This is what we got out from this interview. He would have liked to have had the money. But he knew he wasn't going to win it because he was not going to do anything, not just, not breaking the honor of a handshake, but even just in terms of who he was going to be in the game, right? This is me. This is what I believe. Take it or leave it. So then we do get to Tribal Council. I think I did somehow skip over this conversation that must have happened earlier where, this is when it happens, right? That sorry. Brain fart. This is where we see T-Bird and Kim Johnson, right? T-Bird is trying to, T-Bird saying, it's Tribal Council. I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but I'm not going to give up now. And so we see this attempt, which we discussed earlier, about trying to get Kim Johnson together with Frank, T-Bird, and Kim Powers. Mm-hmm. And she does consider it, right? But she doesn't do it. And she said, T-Bird said, it's a risk, but it's the only chance I got. And she's right. And this is also where she makes this quote that, again, is very well known. Ethan's going to win it all. What bad thing can you say about Ethan? Nothing. Mm-hmm. Right.
I think it's clearly the right move for T-Bird. It's clearly the right move for Frank, and it's clearly the right move for Kim Powers. I think you could debate whether it's the right move for Kim Johnson, because, if she flipped, and you only, Tim, have 3 seasons under your belt at this point. There's a common occurrence on Survivor where when it's 3 alpha males and then an older woman. it's very likely that the older woman isn't going to be given credit for the moves in the alliance. And from this alliance, you could make your own inferences: who's making more of the moves, who's not making the moves, who's more of a floater, who's more of a leader. I think if Kim Johnson were to go with the other three, you could say, look, she got rid of her. Yes, she was aligned with them. She got rid of her biggest competition. But then from her perspective, let's say you go to the final four with Kim Powers, Frank and T-Bird. Frank and T-Bird are never breaking. Then the best you could hope for is a 2-2 at the final four. So I think that the original Samburus were in a lot of trouble in this episode, no matter who won immunity. I think that the only chance of Kim Johnson flipping were to be if Lex did not win immunity, which is why I think that was potentially a big deal. But I still don't think it would have happened. I think Kim was happy to go, but was happy to go as far as she could with her original tribe. And if you're Kim and you go to the end with someone who was from the original Samburu tribe, that whole jury may look at Kim and say, look, you just sort of, even though you turned on them, you still rode, Lex and Ethan's coattails, and you got to the end with like T-Bird, who probably beats Kim Johnson, or Kim Powers, who also probably beats Kim Johnson. Frank, I don't think wins. If she go, okay, her best shot was to go to the end with Frank, but Frank and T-Bird are never splitting up, so that's very unlikely.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
But did I misread this? Was I not right in thinking that Teabag is suggesting that Ethan gets voted?
And I really think that was her only play. I think because
at that point, I was so incensed. I just thought, I was quite liking Teabag at this point until that point, and I thought, no, she's attacking.
Tim, are you calling her Teabag?
Yes, because that was something. No. This was something earlier in the season. Tim called her Teabag, and so now she is Teabag on NSFW.
I didn't know if I was mishearing or
no. She knows about it. We've discussed it on Twitter. I think that might actually be what. No. She loves it. She loves it.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to make sure I was hearing correctly.
Yes, no, she is on this show. She is Teabag.
But Tim, you even said yourself. I was going to say, you even said yourself early in the episode. I know, obviously, you're a big Ethan fan. There's nothing to dislike about Ethan. I love Ethan. But if you're a player out there, why not target Ethan? He's someone, if he goes to the end, is going to be really tough to beat. So your only options here, if you're T-Bird and you're going to Kim, are to target either Big Tom or Ethan. Ethan is definitely the smarter target as opposed to Big Tom.
I agree, but you should have done it earlier.
No,
you can't attack him now.
I do think that Kim Johnson might have flipped on Lex.
I think there's a possibility.
Right.
I don't know if she would have. I don't even know if it's the right move. I think that Kim Johnson is in a really tough spot to win the game, no matter what alliance she goes with. I don't think she's really going to get.
She can't win. She might.
I think her only shot is Frank, and then maybe if your only shot is Frank, maybe you do go with the other side because Frank's on the other side.
Yeah,
but that's such a long shot.
Frank is then going to be in the jury. No, it's just not. This game is already decided. The question is, how many immunities can Lex win? And that's the only question.
No, I think that's
in my mind.
Yeah, I can't say anymore because I know exactly what happens, but I'm not going to confirm or deny your theory.
I do have a habit of sticking my hand up and saying this will happen, and then thinking, oh my god, I should never have said that.
No, but the weird thing with both Borneo and Australian Outback is it really is clear that you are on some level the survivor whisper, because just like I said, you looked at Ethan very early and you said he was going to go far, and you did the same thing with Tina Wesson. I mean, you did it also with Hatch. But
are you telling me I'm right?
Well, look, we know that Ethan is going to go far. It's final 6, and he's still there. So you definitely are picking up on something.
And if Ethan gets into that final group, who are the jury going to choose? Are the jury going to choose somebody who has not upset anybody? Just look how brilliant that.
Right. No, and T-Bird is very, very smart, and she's making what I feel like is the best and possibly the only play she has, given that Lex is not an option.
And here's the thing with T-Bird's vote. Like, she votes for Frank and Tribal, and you could see that she's very upset about it. This is where you get into alliance and friendship. She had both an alliance and a friendship with Frank. Yet she votes for Frank. And I think that this is the opposite of what Lex did in the previous episode, which I criticized. He voted for Brandon. He even though his alliance was going the other way, she's not even in an alliance with these other people, yet she still said, I'm going to vote with the majority here because it doesn't matter who I vote for. Frank's going home. We see what happened earlier in the season when a rogue vote was cast for Lex. I could see Lex, he couldn't be voted for, but if T-Bird voted for Ethan or Kim or anyone who wasn't the plan, anyone who wasn't Frank, I could see them saying, okay, we got to get T-Bird out here. She's too likable, and she didn't even go with our plan last time. So I think that this is a way to assimilate into the group, even though it's not what she wants to happen. Sometimes you just have to go with the majority vote. And even if it's not the best move for you, if you know it's not going to make a difference, you just kind of have to go along with
I was going to credit T-Bird. I was going to credit T-Bird for that, right? Because this might be I think this is the first time we've seen that, where people just vote to go along, right, with the majority when she knew that Frank was going to go home. This is actually Frank's move, because Frank said this also in the interview, and T-Bird did not argue with it at all, that Frank looked at the situation and ordered her to vote for him and said, I will never speak to you if you don't.
I'll be right back. I need to get my charger. My computer's going to die.
I think that's very, very interesting and compelling.
Yes.
I also think it's a shame we didn't hear that, by the way. That was a really good thing for the edit to put in if they did. It would have in a way spoilt the way.
Right.
The way the
and I assume that's why, and I'm assuming that's why we didn't see it.
Put it in, but it would have made sense of the show. Right. But there was something else I wanted to say. And it's gone completely.
Well, I know that Jordan has to go in a minute anyway, so I'm ready to wrap this up. We see the Frank's final votes to his family, thanks them for allowing them to do this. This was lovely. I do want to flag this. He said, Frank, he names his wife and his 2 daughters, and he thanks them for allowing him to do this and promises that he will make all of their dreams come true.
Isn't that lovely? Yeah.
And like I said, in between that and then having listened to that interview with Frank, I do like him as a person. He was a wonderful TV character, but I like him more as a person now. I think just knowing, like I said, that he told T-Bird to vote for him, etc.
I would like to have seen that in the show, and I don't think the edit was making Frank look good.
Yeah, obviously not.
And you see that final confession of Frank when he's talking about his family. You suddenly see where his priorities are, and they're in exactly the right place. And we never saw that in any point in the in the show. And once you see that, you think, oh yeah, I understand Frank now. That makes perfect sense. Why could we not have seen this as an edit? It's because Frank. It's because the edit was sort of portraying Frank as the villain, and that's rather sad. It's a very black and white way of making TV shows. And I personally don't like that. I think everybody's got a range of color. And today, what we saw, we saw the sort of vulnerable, childish side of Tom, and it was beautiful.
Tom, so Jordan, I know that. So we're wrapping up. Do you need to bounce out because you're?
I could say you're good for a few minutes. Going a couple minutes. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, fine. So and I agree for Tim. And again, they have 42 minutes. They have to decide what to include and not to include. But certainly, the Frank that I saw, in that interview is a more human Frank than we saw on the show. But also, he's 20 years older now, right? So who knows?
But Karen, that's what you said. They've got 42 minutes and they've got to decide what to include and what not to include. So suddenly we're looking at the editor's priorities, and I think their priorities are wrong.
I understand what you're saying.
I think these are the priorities that we see in actually every reality show that I've looked at. And I think they're wrong every time because they think it's all about the gameplay. It's not. It's about the development of character, and to see development of character, you need to see the good as well as the bad.
Right. I mean, I do think they did give him the sunset scene in this this episode. They also gave him the elephant scene earlier in the season. So yes, they do make him out to be a villain, and I think that you could argue that some of the things that he said on the season, at least for me personally, I see as not necessarily villainous, but not something that I agree with. But I do think that I don't think he's painted in a completely one-dimensional light. He is antisocial. He is, I don't even know if I would consider him a villain. I think he's just
Yeah.
more on the other side of the more colorful characters. I don't know if that makes him a villain.
Compare him with Tom. Suddenly, Tom says outrageous things, but if you let the edit play out, it's put in context, as we saw today. You could do the same thing, I'm sure, with Frank.
Sure.
Because underneath it all, there's a lovable character.
I agree. And I think Frank is actually a very popular character. Again, not a game player, but a very popular character among old school Survivor fans. He is he's such a unique player. You don't really see anyone like him ever again on the show. So I think that even I wouldn't consider him a Survivor villain. I would consider him a character who's himself. And, if he was someone I had to live with, I probably wouldn't be a fan. But as someone who watched him on a show, I'm happy that I got to see him because he's such a unique character. He has I don't even know if I wouldn't even call it a perspective on the game, but I think he has a perspective on the experience that's fun to watch.
Yeah. He made it very clear also in the interview that going to Africa had always been his dream. His wife, I think, was watching Survivor before. And that's how I think he was in the room and he just heard that they were, accepting applications and they said it was going to be Survivor Africa. Something of that nature. I don't remember the exact details of what he was saying, but that this had always been his dream. He got his trip to Africa, and Rob asked him on this podcast, have you ever been back? And he's like, no, but if you have a plane ticket, I'm there. Right. This was his dream, was to go to Africa, and he got to go to Africa, and he got to interact with the Maasai people, and and like I said, all the experiences he also had after the season that we didn't get to see. I do feel like that certainly it gives us a fuller picture, but that is always true, Tim. When we we always listen to people's exit interviews, or we meet them later, and we realize that there are always big chunks of the story that are left out. And I agree with you. I love the character moments. And if you think there should be more character moments and less strategy now, Tim's going to really start to hate Survivor in about 10 seasons.
I really don't think. I really don't think the character moments are different from the strategy or from the game playing. The character moment should come through that. But sometimes the game is so the actual task so complex. This ostrich egg smashing was so complex. I just lost interest in it almost the moment it occurred. It doesn't even matter that it was this storytelling and memory.
That's why we didn't talk about it. It just
thank God we thank God for small mercies. The thing about Frank is, bizarrely, you wouldn't expect me to have a lot of military friends. I actually do, and I treasure those friendships, and I can understand that sort of life and that sort of mentality. It's not mine, but I understand it, and I'm very sympathetic to it. Possibly that's where the monking comes from and all that sort of stuff. But well, it is, you can't be a maverick. You can't be a maverick unless you're fighting against sort of very strict rules, and there's no stricter rule than the army, really.
Right.
And that's it. I understand Frank.
Yeah. And I think that is the point, is that we are supposed to understand these people, and certainly even if we don't agree with them. Right. Again, it's a way to meet people. Obviously, it's more profound, obviously, for the people on the show. But I feel like also for me that it is a way to get to know people who have had experiences that are very, very different from my own. And, sometimes really like those people. Anything else about this episode before we put it to bed? Jordan, Tim, anything?
I mean, anything that I say is going to be a spoiler. So
right. Yeah. No spoilers.
Everything I need to say about the episode.
No, I was going to say the other thing about the episode is it's very interesting. Tom is playing the part that Bay played for Ethan.
Okay, explain.
Tom is Ethan's sort of Ethan needs somebody to sort of talk to and explain things, and Tom is just doing that. Tom is like Bay. So Tom is allowing Ethan to look. To express things. Tom
is basically Ethan's pet.
I'm afraid so, yes.
Yeah.
And he does the job very nicely. And then you see Ethan, and then you see Tom so running around and having fun. It really doesn't matter what he has to say. Tom
is a pet, but at least we're learning that he is a smarter pet than he wants us to think.
Tom would not survive Tom would not survive in any other show, let alone any other season, without Ethan there.
Interesting.
I think that's my suggestion.
Well, Ethan, Tom, and Lex will all play together in All Stars. So we will just have to see how all that plays out. Yes, we'll see how that plays out.
Lex is the weakest of the three.
Well, we will have to see how it plays out. Okay. So Tim, why don't you, Jordan, you can go first. Where can people find you?
You could find me at Jordan Kalish on Twitter. You could also find me at Jordan Kalish on Instagram, but I'm not really a prolific Instagram user. And is it all right if I plug something, Karen?
Please. I assumed you were going to. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So I am hosting this Friday, February 19th at 8 p.m. Eastern. On Zoom, I am doing a Survivor trivia game, which is it's for money. It's a $15 buy-in, but the winner gets a cash prize. And there is someone, Tim, named Sandra Diaz-Twine, who I am not going to say anything about her on Survivor because I don't want to spoil you. But Sandra Diaz-Twine is known as the Queen of Survivor. She is a great player, a great person to interact with, and she's going to be our guest for this Survivor trivia game. She is going to be playing trivia and doing some Q&A with the fans, so you'll get to interact with Sandra if you play. If you would like to play, it's $15 to @GeorgeNicolaitis, and that's @George GeorgeE Nicolaitis NiColaidis. Winner gets a cash prize. Top 5 placements get an autograph from Sandra, and you'll get to do Q&A with Sandra, whether you win money or win prizes or not. Survivor, it's all Survivor trivia on Kahoot. Going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and also tell people about Twish, your other Survivor trivia show.
Yeah, so I'm on Rob Has a Podcast with Rob Sesternino, and we have a Survivor trivia game show where every week we have 3 contestants. I can spoil the fact, I'm not going to say who it is because it's a little bit of a surprise, but there will be a former Survivor contestant playing. We're recording on Thursday night. So we do a Survivor trivia game. It's different games every week between 3 people. It's usually either a Survivor contestant or someone who covers Survivor podcast, or Survivor experts. And the winner goes up against Rob Sesternino in a Twish stands for This Week in Survivor History. Goes up in a final game against him, and winner gets bragging rights.
Yeah. So that's really fun. That is where I met Jordan from him doing Twish, and he is really the Survivor trivia king. And by the way, this is a game that I will never play. Jordan knows this. I mean, I might be able to play Twish. The seasons now that I have covered, these first 3 seasons, maybe at this point now I am getting to that level where I might be able to answer some of the questions. They're very, very specific, and it's really
very hard. So the type of questions that I ask on This Week in Survivor History, if you're someone who's more I think anyone who's listening to this is a super fan in their own right, because you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you weren't a super fan. But there's different levels of super fandom where you could have seen every season and love the seasons, but you don't know every little bit of trivia. The trivia that we're doing with Sandra on Friday night is going to be a mix of hard, mediocre, easy trivia, where if you're a Survivor fan, you'll be able to answer some of the questions. So don't be scared from the fact that it's not going to be all Twish level questions.
Right. I wanted you to make that point because, like I will never play, like I said, a Jordan trivia game. I was not going to play Twish just because I know how hard those questions are. And I have seen every season, loved every season. I have the memory of a goldfish. So I couldn't answer half of those. Okay, Tim, what about you? Give people the rundown of where they can find you.
Oh, I'm celebrating today because I finally managed to take out the rubbish from my attempt to set up a website. So I've now got a real website, and it's called awesome. Zontal Films. Zontal Films.
Yeah. It's behind him. Just for people who are listening audio only, he's showing us the picture, but it's ZUN TULFILMS. Okay, then I'll let you do it.
ZONTULFILMS. And I think it's
LTD.
.com.
LTD,
and
right?
I think it's .com for the
for the website.
Zontalfilms.com is the website. Right. Zontal Films Ltd is how you find me on YouTube. Otherwise, I'm Professor_Tim_Wilson, which is Instagram, and Prof_Tim_Wilson, which is Twitter. And then I've got a blog called Animate-Tim. I don't understand how I end up having so many sort of personalities, but I suppose that's the problem of having been a goat herder, a monk, and a teacher. So
Yeah, you've had an interesting life, Tim, and that's why you have so many expertise in so many different areas. You can follow me on Twitter at Karen Talks a Lot. I am trying to get use my Twitter and also on Instagram. I am Karen Bell, Bell Eisenberg. I'm trying to use my Twitter and Instagram more. I'm so old that most of the time I'm on Facebook, but I'm going to try to use my Twitter for things other than show announcements. However, for show announcements, if you do want to follow this show, it's very important because when we do have last minute changes or we have things like what we have now, we had an extra special Valentine's Day / Galentine's Day episode with Marilyn Mad Dog Hershey from Survivor Australian Outback. This came together.
One of my favorite characters ever on the show.
It was an amazing, amazing show. It kind of came together at the last
She's
minute.
lovely.
Yeah, so that is already up on Reality NSFW. Now, next time on Survivor, they do talk about family videos, right? It's the family video. The only family visit there's going to be in Africa is going to be via video just because of the location and all of that. But then, as of course, right, when we have the family visit, we are always joined by the great Johnny Fairplay. Man who is very well known for his family visit. So this is the visit he makes every season to us. And so we're really looking forward to that. So other than that, coming up on Survivor NSFW, we are covering the challenge now twice a week. Not just once. I am not on that coverage because challenge is just kind of not my thing, but it's everybody else's thing. And we now have 2 episodes a week as a result. They go live immediately after the episode with Alex Trias and Lauren Pratt for that live reaction show. And then on Thursday evening, there is a recap with Johnny, Zach Hacker, and now this coming week, meaning this coming up Thursday, they're going to be joined by Amber M. And next week, they're going to be joined by Johnny's man crush, Devin. So please consider checking that out. I do 2 other shows a week besides Rewind. I do our Australian Survivor watch / rewatch, where I'm on there with Johnny, Zach, and Matt. So Zach and I have seen this is Australian Survivor season 2 of the modern seasons. Survivor 2017 is often how those Australian seasons are billed as. So Zach and I have seen it before. Johnny and Matt have not, but we watch that every week. And then we also do a Q&A. Both of those shows are only for our patrons. So if you become a patron of Reality NSFW, you can check that out. And we went to Australian Survivor because obviously everybody is missing. There's no new Survivor out there. So we decided to go back and watch literally one of the greatest seasons of reality TV, I would argue, anywhere. We're having a lot of fun with that. And on Reality, on Rewind, it's going to be one of those days. As I said, next week, we're going to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the great Johnny Fairplay to break down the family visit. And then he said it's going to be the trip of a lifetime. And that is not just hyperbole. It truly is. We will come back next week to discover all of that, noon Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT. On Reality NSFW Rewind. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.